So I just got done with the TransAmerica Trail, 2022 on my Honda CT125. I got a couple comments and questions on the TAT Facebook group about what I packed and how I packed so light, which I think I did because I ended up pretty much only needing to buy one or two things. And anything I brought I really used. I didn't bring a whole lot of spare or things that I didn't need. So I think it worked out pretty well. I kind of honed in what I thought I would need to buy over a good amount of time. So I'll go over a little bit about how I packed and what I packed. So starting off with bags, the CT125 of course has a huge rack in the rear that's really good for storing a lot of things without having to buy a rack kit, so that was nice. So first of all, I'm using a Givy 20-liter bag, and then this is an old Field & Stream. I believe it's a 60-liter bag. It's pretty big, that I didn't end up actually needing all that space. It's pretty compressed down at this point. And then I have a Givy, I believe that's a 16-liter pannier bag on the side. The other bag I have is a 6-liter Givy tank bag that I have mounted to the down tube on the Honda 125 because you're sitting on the seat. So that's what I have in terms of bags. And then I do have this front rack here. On the front rack, I originally bought just a cheap Amazon little kind of bottle holder there. And it has this little elastic band that's good for capturing the top of the bottle. It's good for Nalgene's too, but it worked really well for these fuel bottles. Then I have one of these volley straps on top that help just kind of secure it down and keep it from moving around, because this does have some like webbing on it that you can tighten down, but it really wasn't enough for me. And then I wound up buying another Prius bottle, or Primus fuel bottle. Those are 1 liters, because Oregon had some pretty remote sections, and it was a while until I had to use gas. And I had actually used both of those bottles twice, and then once I had to use one of the bottles to get to town. So those definitely came in handy. And then really just for gear, otherwise on the bike, I have these mirror extensions on there just because I'm a little bit taller, so I needed just to clear myself a little bit better. I have a RAM mount for my phone there, and then I have one of these CT125 bars that mounts onto the bar handle, mounts there. I guess while I'm at it, modifications to the bike. So how I kept the gear on the bike, you can see I have one of these cargo nets here. This was not the primary, means to keep all the bags on the bike, because that absolutely would not have held up on the dirt and gravel and the bumps and everything. But what was really nice about it is it did help keep some of these on the dry bags, these things a little compressed, which wasn't big, but I did like how it kept that together so it didn't get snagged on anything. But it was really nice because when I would stop or I want to put a water bottle in there, I could just slip the water bottle in there. You notice in the other video I had my sandals in there. I could just keep some things in there if I was scooting around or wanted to grab them or had a little bit of garbage. So this was really useful. And then to help attach these hooks to the rack, I actually took some webbing here and I put the webbing around the rack, just did an overhand knot on it. And those were nice as just loop points so I could grab onto it. And it just helps the paint a little bit. Not that the paint is worth saving at this point. But that did help a good bit. And then I used rock straps. I believe these are like the 24-inch to 48-inch, something like that. They're the smaller size. These are really solid. These are really good for just tightening down on your gear and then open them up. I did bring some spares, which I should have used, because actually on the last bit of trail, this black Givy bag did fall off and was dangling on the side. So lesson learned there. I won't do that. But yeah, that's how I kept the gear on. And then this 2x4, funny enough, this, if you could guess what this for, this is actually for the center stand, because the back tire, at least the Shinko SR 241, that was a 3-inch. Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. That was a 3-inch in the rear and a 2.75 in the front. That actually was too big and it was hard to get the wheel off without it. So I wound up carrying that whole 2x4 around just for when I had to swap the spare. So just kind of what you got to do with a little bike like this, but I made it work. So along with this, some modifications I did to the bike were the tires I started out with were Shinko SR 241 tires, and I still have the front on. I really like these tires. The back wore kind of quickly, but really good tread, very predictable riding on gravel and road. and I didn't really lose a whole lot when I was in the mud, so I did appreciate having them. What I wound up swapping on twice, because these were the only tires that Cycle Gear had in stock, were Dunlop MX53 tires, which you can see this one's worn pretty fast, and this is actually the second Dunlop I've thrown on it, so that was that was expected. And the trip was 2,700 miles, and so I went through 3 back tires on that with all of this weight and a good bit of pavement riding, especially in the detour I took in Utah. Chain, I put on a DID X-ring chain. That's the O-ring style, so that worked really well. I barely ever adjusted my chain tension because it was still within spec. Stock rear sprocket, and then I did put a 13-tooth front sprocket up front. I added on one of these SAE adapters direct to the battery, popping out right through my air filter. This was good for running a inflatable pump, or a tire pump, which I'll show you is in this bag. And then I did put on, this is pretty typical for the CT125s, a USB accessory socket here, which is really nice for charging my electronics. Otherwise, pretty stock bike. I didn't raise the front fender. I wish I did. I ended up having to take it off when I was in Utah going through some pretty thick mud. The other big thing is the seat on the stock CT125 is massively uncomfortable. I brought an air pad that I would inflate to put on there, kind of one of the hiking ones, meant for when you take a break and you want to sit down, you just blow up this air pad. There's a deer over there. That wasn't working for me, so I was at a truck stop and I saw this Purple mat. Purple's a brand, it's a mattress company, but they also sell these seat pads that are really great for truckers. It was like $60. I kind of debated on getting it. It was kind of big for the seat, but I am so glad I did, because I figured $60, if it's a waste, then that's a lesson learned. But it really improved the comfort, and actually kind of reversed a couple of the, and there's a little baby, and reversed the discomfort I had over the last few days. You can also see here I have a little horn that I did kind of for funsies. It's a little bike horn. And then here I also have one of those, I forget what they're called. But I use that actually to dry my laundry, which I'll show you coming up. So I'll show you some of the gear that I wore, or not some of the gear, really all the gear that I wore. Sorry for shadows. So again, wanted to do this without as much restriction as possible, and so budget was kind of in mind. So this is built gear, pretty entry level, pretty affordable. This is the Storm 2 waterproof system. So these are pants, this is the jacket. I had the jacket first, wound up buying the pants second. They have the little, kind of zip connector on the back of the jacket that also goes into there, into the top of the pants. Good gear. Pants are not vented unless you unzip the side zipper here that goes down the pant leg. So these would get really hot and soaked in sweat and just really uncomfortable. So I'm going to reevaluate this thing in general, but it's armored, kept me dry, so generally did like it. I don't like having all black here. I would like to have some color in it just for safety. So that is kind of important. And then here's the built jacket, comfortable jacket, decent ventilation on it. The pockets are kind of small, I don't love that. Generally what I would keep in here is, this would be any kind of odds and ends. This would be like some cash that I kept in here, and then the other breast pocket is where I'd keep my wallet, so I could always just kind of tap it and just make sure I'm not leaving my wallet somewhere. And then down in the lower pocket here is where I would keep the inReach, and then I would keep that zipped always. So you can look up reviews on the jacket if you care to at all, but otherwise a decent jacket. I was happy with it. Really no major complaints. I was wearing some cheap Amazon summer gloves that were good for riding in the summer, especially when I lived in South Carolina. They were nice, but I actually only used them really one day. I wound up wearing these Climb, I think these are like the Adventure GTX gloves, the Gore-Tex and Gore Grip gloves. These wound up breaking in really nicely over the trip, go figure, but generally really comfortable. They wore down a good bit, but nothing I'm concerned with. That's pretty much expected. But they were really comfortable. They didn't get too hot. And yeah, just good gloves. Really nothing to complain about them. There's some nice venting when you'd hold the gloves a certain way. I don't know exactly where the vents are on it, and I should probably know that, but generally decent gloves. Now for the boots I wore, and I'm wearing them right now, I wonder if I can just show you. These are Chippewa Apache boots. I bought these a long time ago, and I use these for mostly dirty work and motorcycle riding. You can see there's some wear here from my Honda CT90's Kickstarter. But these were good, nice aggressive tread. However, when I did bang my foot on the rock and broke my toe going up Marshall Pass, I definitely had wished to have riding boots, so I would not wear something like this again. And the sole came undone, and that is my duct tape and zip tie around here, so that was not helpful. So I would go something else, but at least they kept me dry. But luckily I didn't have to get into too deep of water and get myself in much trouble there. And then over here for my helmet is a Bell, so I forget the model number exactly, SRT modular. This was, I think, about a $400 helmet, maybe $380. You can see my GoPro mount here, and then a side GoPro mount here, which I did not end up using. Overall, it was pretty comfortable for me. Some of the sweat kind of got to me after a while, especially with my beard, and I couldn't shave it. But it does have the, retractable visor, which is awesome. I mostly rode like this. I always had my eyes covered, but having the entire face down and constricting around your chin here was just a little bit uncomfortable, and that's just how I rode. Now you can see I have this microphone here. That is for my Cardo Freecom 4 system, which I do really like. Really good sound, good connection, reliable, and frankly, with the lid down or the face down, you can't really hear. Anything. It's got some scratches on it. I did not drop it. This is actually from when I went to put the bike down off the kickstand, and it scratched it up. So I hope that doesn't affect the integrity of the helmet. I don't believe it does, but overall, good, comfortable helmet. Not a whole lot of excuses. Kept the sun out of my face here. So yeah, pretty decent. And then I didn't wear any like rain gear or anything like that because this is all waterproof, and I wore it all the time. I didn't really ride my shorts ever unless I was like in the town and I just was kind of skating down. But otherwise, that was the gear. Worked out well. Here is the Givey bag that I ended up using. Really nice bag. I liked all these attachment points. This is where I would secure a water bottle to it, because a lot of times I would keep the water bottle right up front, ready to go. So inside, I just wound up using a lot of these water bottles. I carried about 5 liters of water in total, which was definitely more than I ended up needing, but that's kind of a safety thing, especially in these really remote areas. If I had to wait it out a while for someone to come to me, I was definitely okay with the idea of having a lot of spare water, so that's what I wound up keeping. Here's my clothes bag, another shirt. Again, you're looking at this real time, so I haven't even left Port Orford yet. I'm filming this in Port Orford. These are my clothes, kind of a lot. This is a Patagonia Nano Puff. It's the non-hooded version that I just kept packed up. This I needed a few times, so that was good to have. Colorado, right before Marshall Pass, it got pretty cold. This mesh bag is just a simple drawstring mesh bag from REI. This is where I would keep my dirty clothes and my wet clothes after I would wash them in a sink, and then I would keep that on the front of the bike, and I would just let it kind of blow in the wind all day, and that would help, kind of dry everything up. And so that was nice. I was just checking the battery. Then I have some clothes. These one pair of underwear. These are the Patagonia boxer briefs. I forget the type. These were really nice. I have another pair that I'm wearing now. This is a Patagonia Capeline shirt. I have a lot of Patagonia gear. I'm a bit of a snob in that way, but really solid. It's a bit stained from when I had to work on the clutch on the bike, but really nice shirt. Kept me cool, comfortable, very good. Another Patagonia shirt. I forget the type here. It kind of doesn't matter. They're all technical shirts. Wicking, keeps you cool. Really glad with all those. This, along with the pair I have, are a pair of the Patagonia baggies, 5-inch. I can't say enough about these shorts. I love these shorts. I've had these for like 6 years and they still look brand new. The pair I have on now is the pair I use more for like dirtier work and stuff, like yard work, gardening, painting. So that's the one I'm wearing now. But those were really good shorts. And then in my normal like clean clothes bag here, I have a pack towel, which normally I kept in my DOP kit, but again, I just said repack, so that was in there. Here's a pair of Patagonia joggers. I really did not need these, so I would not have brought them, but they packed fairly light, so I was okay to have them. Here's a pair of just like Adidas boxers. I didn't need 3 pairs, but there was times where having that extra, you know, kind of freeness was nice. This is a pair of cheap sweatpants I bought at a little gift shop. It got pretty cold a few nights, and so I decided to pick these up, and these really help with just being comfortable sleeping, and sometimes after showering I'd put these on. I could have used the boxers in place, or not the boxers, the joggers in place, but these were definitely comfortable to have. Here's a pair of just darn tough, you know, crew socks, I believe, 6-inch or so. Really comfortable. I love darn tough socks. I'm wearing another pair right now, so I carried 2 total pairs, and that was plenty for me. You can wear them multiple days and it's fine. And then I did have a pair of jeans that I did throw out that I didn't end up using at all. I thought I would actually wear the jeans more, but I didn't because I wore my riding pants, gear, my armored pants, and then my shorts under them. This is a Patagonia Tech Web belt. I thought about maybe sending this home because I do like these, but I thought this could also be useful if I had to tie some gear down, so I did keep it with me. So that's everything in terms of clothing. And then I have my DOP kit in here. This is pretty simple. It's just a little bag from REI. It's a toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, which I didn't use the deodorant too much. You're not smelling good really when you're doing this, but when I was camping out, I didn't really want the extra smell and all. And then that was in a Ziploc bag with some Dr. Bronner's, which looks like it actually leaked a little bit right in here, just in case it did leak more and get everything wet. And then, I also have a razor because I wanted to get rid of some of the stubble and stuff, like on my neck, and I would use the Dr. Bronner's to shave, so that was that. And then this I would actually keep in my other bag, my camping bag, but this is another little stuff sack, not stuff sack, a packing cube, if you will, from REI. It's expandable. It's not expanded here, but it can be. This was a lot of camping gear. Now, one thing is I did give one of the guys, or I sold my pot to one of the guys because he really liked the small MSR. I think it's 3/4 of a liter pot. That was pretty nice. But this was the camping gear I had. So I had a little pot kind of stand, if you will, for the fuel canister. This one's shaved down to fit inside of the pot that I did have. I didn't need to use this at all, but it's pretty light. It packs into my little kit anyway, so I brought it. Here's one of those Light My Fire titanium sporks. Use this, of course, a ton. Here is part of an old Coleman kind of pocket rocket type stove that I've had for probably 10 years now. So that was nice to have. I had some bug spray. This is a Sawyer picaridin spray. I only needed this like once, so I probably wouldn't bring that again. Here's another rock strap, a pink one that I kept in there. Here is, I don't know exactly how long of paracord. Didn't end up needing this, but again, would be really nice to have. A Leatherman Surge. This was pretty key for a couple things. I mean, just having this knife. This is the only knife I carried. I carried another actually small Leatherman in my jacket, but I didn't end up using it, so so this was good for tightening up like my mirrors and stuff when I dropped the bike. This is a Sawyer Screes filter and bag. This little GSI cup. I didn't need this because my MSR kit comes with a little plastic cup on the bottom, so this was not needed. Headlamp. This came in handy a couple times. I could see it coming in handy more, so I definitely would keep it. Matches, did not use, did not make a fire. Duct tape, which I did use on my boots that I'm actually currently wearing. This is a GSI pot scraper, which I didn't need because I was bringing all freeze-dried meals, and this can be good for cleaning, so did not need that. That was all the camping gear. This was my sort of roadside or quick grab kit that I just have in a bag I got with a headset for something else. So in here I kept wipes. These came in handy a lot, but luckily a lot of campsites that I stayed at, state parks and stuff, they did have hot showers, so I didn't need those. Here's a trowel that did come in handy. Toilet paper that did come in handy. A little first aid kit also came in handy. And then a little Gerber saw, which I did not use. But there were definitely times on the trail where I saw trees that had fallen that I could definitely stand to have cut if needed, but luckily they were on pretty well-maintained Forest Service roads. And so that's probably in the sweet spot of like trees you might have to, fallen limbs that you might have to cut down just to get them out of your way so you continue on, because stopping to cut a branch is fine, but if you have to reroute just because of a dumb little branch that you could have cut, that could add hours to your day. And so that was really rough, and the thought of that I just really wasn't a fan of. It definitely weighs a little bit and it takes up a bit of space, but again, you can make up that space pretty quickly elsewhere and be just fine. So I would say definitely plan on taking it, or taking something of the like. Even if you want to use one of those rope saws, that could probably do you just good. This I actually carried in my pocket for a lot of Oregon. It's been a counter assault bear spray. Saw 2 bears, had a really close encounter with one of them. It's definitely got some wear on it, and I hope it's still good, but definitely bring this. You know, some folks think about carrying when they're out in the wilderness. I'm not going to, you know, obviously get into the legality, pros and cons of that, but this is of course legal, and so I decided to bring that, and I was definitely glad to have that. And then here's that little Climate Cush inflatable seating pad, which was nice to have, but now that I have that cushion, I don't really need something like this anymore. But yeah, so that was everything in the black divvy bag. Again, there was more water in here beforehand. There wasn't any food in here. That's in the other bag that I'll show you. But this was nice, and the nice thing about the way I organized this, except for this, because again this was in my other bag, was when I stayed in a motel, I could just really take this, and this would be my overnight bag. The other bag was all camping gear that of course would not need in a hotel, and like, you know, this, you know, the kind of toiletry kit for that I did not need, but that was good. What I also kept in here was the GoPro case that came with my Hero 10. I'll go over this in another clip, but I kept that in there as well. So I'll go over all the electronics that I brought with me. You can see I have a whole mess here. Again, I'm shooting this real time. I'm still in Port Orford, so showing you kind of what I went over. I'll go over the major parts, and then I'll get into some of this mess in here. So first of all, a lot of cables. So I'm an iPhone user, so I brought mostly you know, iPhone equipment, or iPhone compatible equipment. Not that was really a huge factor. This was my navigation phone. It's an iPhone 11 Pro, I believe. It's an old phone. It's not my actual you know, day-to-day phone, because as you know, the camera on a motorcycle, or the camera on the phone when you're driving on a motorcycle, can get the image stabilization, I believe, components in the camera can get messed up from all those vibrations. And so I just dedicated this phone to it, which was fine. The GPS worked in airplane mode and in completely remote areas, and then I put this waterproof kind of case around it, which was nice, even though I didn't hit a whole lot of rain. Main navigation I used was Gaia GPS. I love Gaia. I got really familiar with it beforehand and was able to plan detours, plan routes, go through a lot of data. It was really useful. I didn't use Osmand or any of that. On here I also had the GoPro Quick app, so I can control the GoPro on my helmet remotely through here, so that was nice. I could check the preview to make sure my positioning was good, and then at night, you know, I could connect it to Wi-Fi if I was at a hotel, the hotspot on my phone or something like that. So this worked out nicely, and it was on the RAM mount on my bike, and then on the bottom I have the you know, obviously the charging that I set up to that USB socket on the bike. So this came in handy, did not fail me. A couple times it would take time to update the map. I think that's more a Gaia thing than a particularly, you know, a phone here with no service, so that was good. Other big thing I used was my Garmin InReach Mini 2. This is absolutely necessary, I believe. You know, I did not need it, but the nice thing about this is, again, depending on the plan you have, you can track your movements every day with it. And so I turn it on, the battery would last probably 5 days before I needed to recharge it. And you know, a lot of my friends and family, they could keep up to date with me on the you know, the share.garmin.com / and then of course your unique address, and they could see your movement. So it was really nice, and it was also fun in that respect. The SOS feature is good. When I broke my toe going over Marshall Pass, I could use this just to kind of let my my family know that, like, hey, you know, something happened, but it's all good. This is really good peace of mind for you, peace of mind for all your loved ones. Buy it. Just bite the bullet and buy it. Do not go out and do the TAT without it. You are in, if you don't already know, you are in some of the most remote places in the lower 48, and God forbid something happens. you don't want to do this, especially like me when I planned some detours and I was not on an official TAT route. I really had no idea who would be coming by. In some parts of Utah, I was alone for like 5 hours. I didn't pass a single person. If I stopped, it could have been maybe 20 minutes until someone came behind me if we were keeping the same pace, and then I suddenly stopped. But still, get this, okay? Now this is a battery bank. I believe this is a 10,000 milliamp battery pack that I used, that I brought with me. I realized that this probably wouldn't have been enough, and I've had this for a couple years, so it's probably lost a little bit of its life. So I ended up buying another one, which I'm actually using to charge the GoPro right now. This is another Anchor battery pack. It's a 20,000 milliamp hour battery pack, and then I would have this charged throughout the day through the micro USB there, and then it would be good at night to charge my stuff. So that was good. I bought this little Amazon GoPro battery bank with 2 off-branded batteries. These didn't seem to hold quite the life that the GoPro battery is. I don't know exactly their capacity versus the original GoPro, but this was good. Again, I would have this charged throughout the day with USB-C, so I could have a battery to swap in later. So that was good to have. And then I have a whole mess of things here. So this was the box that I got the GoPro, which is a Hero 10 black with, and I'm using a media mod on it because I had hoped to use a lavalier mic, or lapel mic, which did not end up working for me, which is probably fine because all the narrations just would have taken a lot out of my day. And there's a lot of philosophy on if you really want to record. Originally I wasn't going to buy a GoPro because I did not want to mess with the camera, mess with all this gear. But then when I realized that I would kind of regret not having the GoPro and having footage of this, is when I bit the bullet and went for it. So that was the lapel mic. This is a USB-C charger that's of course for a 120 volt receptacle that I would use when I was in a motel, or I was just in a library and I charged there, so kept that with me. This right here, this little zip-tied USB to lightning adapter for the iPhone on the bike, this wound up dying on me pretty early in the trip, so I kept it with me. I should have just thrown it out, but this wound up dying on me. I kept another spare USB to lightning adapter for charging my iPhones. This is the GoPro camera mount for helmets. This actually broke on me. One of these tabs broke on me because I kept trying to put it on my helmet, on the top of my helmet while I was wearing the helmet. So I was fidgeting with this, and I think that just kind of wore this down, and it wound up dying on me. Another little wall socket here, and that was good for the USB in general. This is the door to the GoPro in case I didn't want to use the media mod, so I brought that with me. This is a spare, I believe, 128 megabyte SD card, and then I have a 512 megabyte in it now. Brought a spare GoPro screw. This was a USB drive just in case I had to transfer anything to a computer. This is the Apple Lightning to USB adapter, which I would connect the GoPro through USB-C through this to my iPhone, and I could download the footage directly over USB that way versus joining the local Wi-Fi network of the GoPro. So that was good to have. I have another short USB-C cable in here, a short micro USB cable here, and then a retractable micro USB cable here, which I didn't need all of these. I really only needed one micro USB because that would charge my battery bank as well as my Cardo Freecom 4 Plus comm unit and Bluetooth unit on my helmet. I have some spare Apple earbuds in case my head unit went out on my helmet for music. Didn't need that. A spare adapter for the lapel mic in case mine were to crap out, but it wound up not doing that. And then this was actually a nice little piece of kit that I found pretty late before I left. This is an SAE adapter, 12 volt to USB adapter from the battery tender company. So if I was running things off of my front USB socket on the bike, I could plug this in and run something in a little bag on the side. I only really ended up using this at camp, and I would run it off the bike sometimes with just the key and the ignition on the bike, which is risky, but luckily the CT125 does come with a kickstart, so I didn't really have to worry too much about that. And then of course I brought my normal cell phone that I kept in the pants pocket on my riding gear, and then my InReach always stayed on my person, always in the pocket on my jacket. And you should never not have those two items on you, because there's some times where you could fall off the bike, or a number of things. You could walk away from the bike and you get into trouble and you need those devices. So again, a lot of electronics gear here, more than I really needed. I probably needed one of each cable, realistically. No headphones, you know, stuff like that. But luckily each of these things is pretty light, and when it all fit inside this box crammed, I wasn't taking any additional space. So yeah, that was all the other. Now the front givey bag on the bike, the little tank bag that's on the down tube, it didn't carry a whole lot. It was nice to kind of have it a little bit open for the odds and ends that I wanted to squeeze in there. I did end up taking my work phone, and I know there's a whole lot of debate about that, but I did bring it, and I was also okay to have another spare cell phone. Again, I had 3 phones on me, plus my InReach, so it was kind of a lot. This is another one of those REI bags, the same type that I use for my DOP kit. In here would be kind of some random things. So I had like my spare key for the bike in here. I had keys for the locks I had on the bike, which I didn't end up needing. And for some reason I had this, which is just a little light that I would hang inside of the tent. Then I had a pair of sunglasses in here. And sometimes I'd have my spork in here, but it was just nice to have. There's no organization internally to that bag, and so having this that I could grab with some odds and ends. Like I would keep my wall charger for my phone in here too. I also kept like an electrolyte tablet container in here for my water, so I kept that in there. And then this other little bag I'd keep for some quick grab items. So I had the little bottle of sunscreen, which I didn't end up using because I wasn't in the sun too long, and actually the only time I got sunburn was yesterday after I completed the tat, and I got a little sun on me. This is some hand sanitizer, which is good like before eating, or if you had to use the bathroom on the side of the road, you can use this. And then I had a bunch of Cliff Bars, which I would eat and then replace at gas stations along the way, just to kind of keep me fueled. And this bag I got like at a thrift store, and I ended up throwing everything in here. And that's really the only stuff I would carry in that tank bag. You know, probably could have fit a little bit more, but like I said, it was nice to have some of that extra room. And so yeah, for the final bag, it's just this Givey Corium 16 liter, I believe, saddle bag. I made this rack out of stuff from like Ace Hardware because the racks to buy for the CT125 are expensive and the lead times are long, so I ignored it. This is a Titan strap, if you can't see, that I bought just to secure it on there, which I didn't end up needing. I'm not going to take this bag off the bike just because it was pretty much, I secured it on there and I can actually just undo it pretty simply here. So this top strap is a little bit of a pain to get on and off. Of course, that was easy. Unclips from the side. So this bag I didn't need to get into a whole lot because this was really just backup and tools and spares. So in here, you open it up, I have my toolkit. I can go into this in another video, and I'll probably do that after because I'm getting picked up soon. But this has all my tools, tubes, chain lube, stuff like that, some spare hardware. So that was really useful. Here's the Kickstarter. I took this off when I worked on my clutch in Utah, and I just don't want to put it on there because you can tell I was rubbing it with my foot and pushing it back, so I just left it off just in case. This is another fuel bottle. It's a 640 milliliter bottle that actually has engine oil in it. A little bit much for what I needed, but that was fine. This is a 1 liter Hydro Pack Stowe soft water bottle. This is just kind of backup water, which I did not need. I have a Slime air compressor, which is really handy. I also have a hand pump in my tool bag just for a backup, but this one's, you know, normally meant for cars, but what I had to do is the cigarette adapter on the end for like a car receptacle. I took that off and I wired in an SAE plug so I could fit into the SAE plug on my bike. And so this worked really well. Used that a few times just to top off. I have, these are the summer gloves I mentioned. Didn't end up wearing these really ever. I have a spare rock strap in here. And then the only thing left in here are 2 sets of tubes. And these are the 17-inch by 2.75 to 3-inch tube. And then like this one I have the valve stem out, which actually this is from when I took it out of from Cycle Gear. I should have asked for them back, but you can reuse valve stems, it's not a big deal. So those are just in the bottom, and then that's all the gear that I really kept in here. And I still had some room, like I would put lunch in here sometimes if I picked up lunch from a grocery store, or like little odds and ends, but otherwise I really did not need a whole lot. And I think I packed just right. All the tools I bought were good. When I did have to work on the clutch, I did stop at an Ace Hardware, and I got a 3/8 ratchet, which is a little expensive, and a 17 millimeter shallow 6-pointed socket, a 14 millimeter, I believe, shallow socket as well, or maybe it was a 12 millimeter, it doesn't matter, but it was for the foot peg bolts. And so I did buy those, and so I just added them to the kit. You know, I probably won't need to do that again, or hopefully don't need to do that again, or I'll just buy like a 1/4 inch adapter, and I can show my toolkit later. But this worked nicely. It didn't really offset the balance of the bike a whole lot, or at least if it did, I got pretty accustomed to it pretty quickly. The rack that I built did bounce a good bit. So leaning the bike over. Did bounce a good bit down the road, but so be it. That was fine. But otherwise, that's really all my packing. It really wasn't a whole lot overall, and everything, like I said, that I packed, I pretty much used or needed. So very happy with it. Not a whole lot I think I would change on here. I would like to change maybe my overall, you know, bag system, so I had something a little bit more secure too. Parking outside of stores got me a little bit nervous, but luckily I didn't have any issues there. But really good system overall. So I'm going to abbreviate this part just a little bit. This is my camping bag. Pretty simple in there. I have a Marmo Catalyst 2-person tent where I have the stakes are separate. Stakes and poles are separate from the actual tent material, which I kept in a Sea to Summit compressible stuff stack, which just helped compartmentalize it and bring down the space a good bit. I have a non-collapsible camp pillow, or sorry, non-inflatable camp pillow in there. I don't like inflatable camp pillows. They're kind of uncomfortable to me. So I did kind of, you know, give that up for the extra, you know, space and comfort. I did have all my meals in here. I used a lot of the singles, I think Backpackers Pantry meals. Pretty good meals. I did like them. And they packed fairly small. I carried 5 breakfasts and 5 dinners, which is maybe much to carry at one point, but I did anyway. And then, like I said, I had some Cliff Bars up front. And then I had a 60-degree Eureka sleeping bag, a really, really old one I had. That actually was not enough. I did wind up buying a little Coleman fleece sleeping bag liner that was rated to like 50 degrees. With both of those added up, I was really comfortable for every night on the tat. So that was comfortable there. And then yeah, that was really it. I kept that other little bag of camping gear that I showed you, all my kind of like my spork and my duct tape and my mug and stuff. I would keep that all in there, and it generally stayed about the same shape. And I know that's a lot of stuff missing from here, but it really didn't add much to what I have in there right now. So I'm back home now, and I decided I should show my toolkit. This may vary for a lot of people depending on the bike you have, so some of these tools are particular to the CT125. I just keep it in a little Husky bag. I think it's technically like a document bag, just something cheap from Lowe's. I did have a tool roll. It wasn't one of the really nice ones you get from some of the kind of big names, but this just kind of worked for me with the size. It was pretty compact for what it was, but it's not organized really at all, so that was a big kind of bad part. So I kept a little roll of duct tape in here. This came in handy a couple times, like when my soles on my boots ripped off. I didn't need to keep it in here, and actually for a lot of the trip I kept it in a different bag, but then I ended up putting it in here because generally when I took this out is when I needed the duct tape. Little thing of WD-40, that's what I would use when I was like swapping tires as my tire lube. I know you're not really supposed to use WD-40, it's not recommended. However, this little bottle was pretty good, but I think in the future what I'll do is I'll just keep one of those little eyeglass spritzers, and I'll fill it up with a little mixture of like Dawn or, you know, any dish detergent and water, and that should actually work pretty well and has the kind of added benefit of also cleaning your hands while you're working with all that stuff. Here's a little from Double Tough. I use Double Tough tubes. This little kit repair, or tube and patch kit repair kit, which I didn't end up needing to use, thankfully. My wrenches are not probably the smartest way to go about it, and I know you can get the mixed you know, tire spoons with wrenches, so this is the way I went. This is a 19 millimeter. This is for the nut on the rear axle of the CT125. Then I have a Leatherman Surge, which I kept in here. I had a smaller Leatherman, I think it's like a Leatherman Squirt, that I would keep in my jacket pocket, but this would be good, and sometimes I'd actually leave this in the tank bag with me so I could adjust my mirrors when I would drop the bike, which was frequent. This is big and a little overkill, but I really love this tool set. It's from Vera. It's a Tool Check Plus in metric size. It comes with a bunch of the kind of smaller size sockets from 5.5 to 13 millimeter, and then it comes with a bunch of 1/4 inch drive insert bits here, which this is more, and it also comes with the 1/4-inch drive ratchet adapter. More bits than I would need, and more sockets. I could have just taken the ones I knew I needed, but I liked having the flexibility, and this pack's up pretty small, so I did take it. Here's a 1/4-inch bit driver, 1/4-inch bit ratchet, which will of course take that 1/2 or 1/4-inch socket adapter to take these sockets, and then a small 1/4-inch extension right here. So this came in handy a couple times actually, so I'm glad I brought it. Here's a couple spare pieces of hardware, spare axle nuts, which was needed during the trip. Fun story there. Some small hose clamps, which for a second took the place of an axle nut. That was fun. And then a 1/4 M6 by 1.0, screws of various lengths, some washers, some M6 by 1.0, nuts in here, also the M8, I believe, which is also commonly used. Pretty small number, and also just in like a hardware bag from Ace. But pretty small number. It was kind of hard for me to gauge what I would really need. You can buy those prepackaged kits in there, but I would always say don't rely on that. Keep that maybe in your toolbox at base camp or something, and make sure the spares you're bringing are kind of particular to your bike. This tool was really sweet. I knew about these, but I didn't buy it until I found it inside of a Cycle Gear in Boise, Idaho. But this is a valve stem puller, so you'll thread this into your valve stem, and then this will thread in as your valve stem cap. And you can thread this through your rim to your tube, and you can help pull your valve stem through your rim while you're setting a new tube or replacing your tire, etc. Really useful tool, saves so much headache, and weighs essentially nothing, and it's less than $10, so really useful. Another really useful tool here is the Motion Pro Bead Buddy. Again, packs to nothing, but super handy, saved me a lot of pain when putting tires on, and I use this at home too. Now you can get the paddle style if you want to bring something bigger, which is really for saving your rims from your spoons. Well, I guess it's both actually. I don't know it too well, but this is really awesome. A couple more wrenches in here. This is a 12mm, which is good for like your mirrors and a few other things. This is a 10mm, which you'll need on, kind of everything. This is a 14mm, which is needed for the other side of the axle, for the actual axle. This is obviously a tire pressure indicator. I don't think this is very reliable actually, so I'm probably going to ditch that. There's a bunch of zip ties, just like duct tape zip ties, and I guess WD-40 a little bit. This I only had to use, again, from my boots actually, but this could have come in handy a lot of times on the bike. Probably packed maybe more than I needed at various lengths, but good to have, weighs nothing. This is another 1/4-inch extension. I knew I would need this if I had to swap my sprocket or tighten my sprocket, because that little Vera kit wouldn't really go deep enough for me to get in there without like taking off my shift pedal and stuff, so brought another one of those. This is a 6mm L Vera Hex Plus Allen key, and this was used for, again, actually my mirrors, and then a number of other things on the bike, like the body panels. Then I have another L key, and I think this is a 5mm. Again, those are two sizes that are commonly used on the CT125. Fuse puller, in case I had to replace any fuses on it that were a little too deep and I didn't want to risk marring up with my Leatherman. Valve stem removal tool. This is two sizes, and actually before I left I was going to just hack off the end just to save a little space, but that's really not a whole lot of space to save, so I never got around to it. And then really all that's left is a hand pump. This is just a bicycle one that's a backup that I would use sometimes if I didn't get my other 12-volt pump out. I would inflate the tube, just a little bit, like 2 psi, just to give it some form before I actually swap the tube out. And then I have one of these battery tender USB to SAE 12-volt adapters in case I wanted to run any USB devices off of my actual accessory port. And then I have the little kind of screwdriver that Honda gives you in the original kit that's just got a flathead here, and the blade comes out, flips around, and then goes into a Phillips head there, which is a little bit redundant with that other kit I have, but sometimes having a long reach screwdriver like that is useful. And then last but not least are the Motion Pro Bead Pro tire spoons. So these are really good because they're good for breaking beads on your bike. I don't have that problem on the 125, so in a way this was a lot of money to spend for not a whole lot of value added. However, I did like that these were, one, I like stuff from Motion Pro. I think everyone does. It's high quality. But they're aluminum. They're super strong. And, of course, they also are tire spoons. So I was able to make this work. And I believe, versus the other tire spoons that I've used, that this very generously rounded end is seems to avoid pinching tubes, fingers crossed, than really anything else. And they're also lightweight because they're aluminum. And they're generally much shorter, so obviously you're losing a little bit of leverage there, so you got to replace that with just some elbow grease. But these worked really nice, and I'm glad to have them. And again, you hopefully always have them, so when I get a bigger bike and I do need to break the bead, I can use these. So yeah, those are all my tools. The only thing that's not pictured here is I bought a similar size can of Motorex, whatever the brand is, synthetic tire lube that I carried with me, and I would lube the tire up in the morning after a little bit of riding just to help get the the chain lubed up. I didn't end up cleaning my chain a whole lot, which I should have done, but it stayed kind of dry throughout the trip, so that was fine, or clean throughout the trip. And the other things I did have to buy that I removed from this kit are a 3/8 ratchet and a 12 millimeter and I think a 17 millimeter socket for when I had to remove some other items on the bike so I could drop the clutch cover off. But otherwise, good kit. I pretty much used everything that I brought here, except for the tube repair kit that I showed you and a lot of the insert bits on this wear kit. And there really wasn't a whole lot else that I wish I had brought, I think, in general. Another tire spoon probably would be a little bit helpful, but again, after so long, you only have two hands, and with the Bead Buddy, that takes up really a big need for the third toolkit. So again, this is what I brought. This is probably going to vary a good bit for your bike, but there's definitely some things that you kind of can't go without. Tire spoons. Definitely always bring a backup pump, because your 12 volt could crap out on you, and this is pretty much never going to. I know there's a really good one made in the USA. Cycle pump, I think it's called, that I was considering as well. That's really reliable. They make a 12 volt pump that should be way more reliable than a little modified one that you make. But yeah, good kit. So yeah, those are all the tools. So that's all the gear I brought for the TransAmerica Trail. Again, I think I packed pretty light. I didn't end up needing to buy a whole lot of things on the trail. I think I mentioned that I bought the sleeping bag liner, the few tools I needed for the clutch repair, and then water bottles when I lost my little insulated bottle, and then the 2-liter Hydro Pack flexible dromedary bag essentially that I brought with me. So overall, and the thing was, I was comfortable with everything I had. Like, I didn't really go without. I didn't have to live rough, if you will, even when I was camping, and especially not in a motel. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice is, and your financial situation does factor in, and of course I can't really kind of advise based off of your situation, but I would say try to pack light in the beginning. You can trade off there, right? You can ship things home, or you can buy things when you need them, and arguably one may be easier for you than the next. Hopefully you have somewhere you can ship it, and it's going to be safe until you return home. And post offices are everywhere in the US. It's kind of the point. And so hopefully it'll be easy to send things home, but also you might get kind of attached or a little bit into the hoarding mentality, for lack of a better term, where you want to keep everything and your bike's weighed down and you got a lot more to process and deal with at the beginning and end of each day, and sometimes in the middle of the day. So keep that in mind. And frankly, along the trail, there should be a good number of outdoor stores or just convenience stores, really, and things that can help you get along the way if you do need to buy things. But the biggest thing to remember is a lot of the preparation and a lot of what you need to bring with you is kind of all up in your noodle. You have to know how to adapt, how to be a little creative when things happen, sort of like I mentioned with the hose clamp when my axle nut fell off. So make sure you spend your time, get really familiar with your bike, know how to take it apart to a pretty good degree. Your carburetor, if you have a carb bike, definitely know how to swap a tire and tube, but practice before you leave, because that can be a real day ruiner, trip ruiner, a whole lot, and that can run you a bit if you have to get a tow truck or someone to call you. And I'm seeing people who are having that issue on the TAT Facebook page. So yeah, just try to pack light and know that you can modify it along the way. Try to also, before you go, kind of memorize all the gear you have, so that when you do go, you know when you're cleaning up camp, you know everything you have, that you're not missing everything. Obviously, you could just do a sweep of your campsite at the end of, or the beginning of the day, in the morning when you're about to leave, and check everything. But that's pretty key. But don't get too lost in the sauce. Don't try to overpack. Don't try to get the most expensive gear. I could probably make a video about how to do this on a budget. In a lot of ways. I mean, I did it on a budget bike, and again, that's a new bike that was budgeted. If you go with an older model, you can obviously really get a lot of value out of that. But a lot of this doesn't have to be expensive. All your tools, like even the Motion Pro, the Bead Pro tire spoons, that's one of the most expensive options you can go with. You don't have to do that. You save a little bit of money in exchange for some weight. But your camping gear can be cheap camping gear. Your water bottles can be water bottles, just Dasani or Smart water bottles. Your stove can be an eBay or Amazon, eBay stove. You can do this pretty cheap, and that's the biggest thing. Is I think a lot of people, if you're new at this or something, should not be set off from the cost. There's an unavoidable cost in general that you have to deal with, but for the last 4 days of the trip, because I didn't have any mechanical problems or tires or anything, I was living on just about $20 a day, maybe a buck or two more, a buck or two under. And I was traveling with two other people, so we could split costs, so that really helped. But you can do this really cheap. You can, again, that's very relative for the TAT, but you don't have to go in, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars for the most expensive gear, the best tools, the best luggage systems. Make it work for you. Get out there, like, have fun. And just right size it for you. And then if it's something that works for you, if adventure motorcycling works for you and you want to keep going with it, then you can decide on how much you want to invest at that point. But yeah, definitely try to start small, be prepared, don't skimp on the essentials: water, emergency recovery device, SOS device, personal locator beacon, etc. But yeah, go out there and have fun, and yeah, thanks for watching.